Hello and welcome to the Topdeckers YouTube channel. Today we're interviewing a very special guest. Allow me to introduce Elin of 1939. Welcome, Elin. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Bubbles. I'm doing so great today, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you so much for joining us. So today we're going to be breaking the interview into three separate sections. The first section is going to be questions from the Topdeckers YouTube channel team. So it's going to be based around you and your personality, as well as around cards. We then have a follow-up set of questions, which are all community questions. They'll cover like a similar set of areas, so it'll be about you, and then it'll be about cards as well. And then we do have a third set of questions, for which I'll be handing the interview over to another member of the Topdeckers team, which is Elena, also known as J Queen, who's going to be asking you some questions about femininity and equality and the importance of it in the gaming industry. So that's what we've got in store, but we're just going to get straight into it with the questions from our team. So the first question is, how have you found your time as community manager so far? Was there anything that surprised you about Cards and its community that you weren't expecting, or was it pretty much all what you had in mind going in?
It's been amazing. It's been really awesome. I'm so happy, grateful to be part of the team. I don't think that there's anything maybe particularly that I can say really surprised me, but I'm incredibly grateful that I really feel like I've been welcomed with open arms by the community. So yeah, there's so many just awesome people in the community, so many really passionate people, so many people who are very welcoming and very kind of ready to help out. So it's been really special to come into this community.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it's been okay so far. So 1939 recently hosted the World Championship. How was your experience helping to organize such a large event? Because it's obviously the biggest event that we have each year for cards. Did you feel like you were going through familiar territory and like you knew what you were doing, or was it mostly a learning experience and sort of watching what other people were doing, maybe having Ollie give you a bit of a guiding hand with it all?
It was definitely a bit of a mix. So, I mean, I've had kind of some experience in organizing some things, but definitely on a much smaller scale. So this was kind of taking it up a notch and definitely going a little bit into the next sort of leagues. I had a lot of help from Ole, just especially in terms of just advice and I mean he's obviously done this many times before, so just kind of getting his thoughts on everything he'd done and what are kind of the things that you need to make sure to think about. And obviously, it's such a huge project. There are so many moving elements, and just having to stay on top of all of these different parts was it was a challenge, but it was so much fun. And just, I mean, I mentioned it on the esports podcast that we did as well. We had kind of like a couple of last minute things that where like our main producer Mark was, a storm kept him stuck in New York, and it was like not sure if he was going to make it or not, and that was quite scary. But we managed to figure that out. And there was, there were kind of like a few little last minute elements. We had a big board that goes kind of behind the casters in the casting booth, and just on the kind of last minute, it hadn't arrived yet. I was promised it was supposed to arrive at a certain time, and I'm very grateful that I just had this kind of divine inspiration to give him a call and just check the status, and found out that something had happened and somehow it had kind of fallen between and it wasn't being done, but they managed to rush it through. So there's so many kind of little things like that you don't sort of realize, these things could go wrong. But it all worked out in the end. And it was such a fun experience. And of course, just none of this could happen without there being a huge team. I was maybe the main person responsible for making sure that the whole picture was okay. But there were so many different individuals that helped make this all happen. Just, I mean, the entire kind of 1939 team, Julia, our graphic designer here, she was just a massive help in putting together the whole set. And we even managed to have, Darkness's girlfriend was there to kind of powder our noses. Every single one of the guys that came to be on camera were just such professionals. And obviously the team that we're working with at Skauskod, they've been through this a few times. So, it was a lot of fun, but I was so grateful as well to have just a wealth of experience around me to kind of support and make sure that it all went well.
Awesome. Well, hopefully next year is just as smooth as that one was. I know
For
there's every year there's a lot of people looking forward to it, so I imagine it can be a lot of pressure on you guys to sort of nail it every time. Talking of which, how have you found casting and sort of paneling on events so far? Because obviously it can be quite a change from sort of regular, I don't know, community management work, I'd say. Has it been something you've done before, or was it a little bit of a culture shock moving into that?
I mean, it's been a lot of fun so far. It has been a little bit daunting, but I mean, I did do a little bit of streaming before I came into this job, just kind of casually. And so I have kind of some experience being live in front of a crowd, that kind of thing. But this was definitely kind of, I needed to adjust the skill set a little bit to this kind of casting position. But it's been a lot of fun, and so far I think it's been going all right, and I'm really grateful to the whole team for welcoming me well and supporting me well, because obviously we have kind of, like Darkness and Spoo's been there for a long time, just a wealth of knowledge, and so it's really great to be able to kind of rely on them as I'm still building up mine and my collection, and
So, talking of collection, have you had much of an opportunity to play and explore the game? And if so, which sort of play styles and decks do you find the most enjoyable to play, and which ones do you find the least enjoyable or the most challenging to play against? Sort of what avenues of the game have you been able to explore so far?
So yeah, I've definitely had some time to play the game. I wish I had more, to be honest, because I have a lot of a lot of tasks on my plate. But I try to squeeze in as much time as I can. I really enjoy a lot of those kind of crazy, kind of fast-paced OTK stuff. I mean, obviously, J aggro is one of the first kind of decks that you pick up, and you can really get through. You can have a lot of fun with it. But I really enjoy, like, I tried out some Mobilize, a bit of Alpine. It's not the most effective on the meta kind of ladder right now, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's really satisfying when you manage to get kind of those right synergies. Then there's also certain decks, kind of like Noin. He's an amazing deck builder, and I've tried some of the decks that he's brought to tournaments. He brings some crazy kind of ramp combo decks, and those are decks where like there were a few months ago, there was one deck that Ole was saying, he was playing it again and again. It was just like, oh my god, I don't know what's happening. I don't understand what I'm doing, but I just keep winning. And I tried that deck, and I did not have the same experience.
No,
I had more challenges with that. So that's maybe what I'm still working on a little bit.
I know all too well having someone send me a deck list and be like, this is amazing. And then I try it out and I'm like, I just cannot win with it. And they're like, well, I'm rank 1 with it. What's your, what are you struggling with?
Yeah, right.
I would like to comment, though, that I see Darkness has sort of spread a little bit, and that you've started calling it J aggro as well. Compared to Jaggro, because I've noticed 99% of the community, we've all agreed that it's Jaggro, and then Darkness sticks on this J aggro, and I'm glad to see that he's influenced you. Whether for the better or worse is up for judgment, but certainly I can see the influence rubbing off.
It's funny because I always used to say Jaggro, but like very recently something like we usually are a casting pair, so he's definitely rubbing off on me. Who knows? Maybe before I know it, I'm gonna be saying Frightened Retreat. Oh, no. I love the Darknessisms.
Yeah, there's a few of them. I'm curious because I know he's definitely aware of some of them, but I'm certain there's certain ones we all are aware of and we absolutely love that he just doesn't realize is going on, and I'm not sure which ones he's aware of and which ones he isn't. So in Cards, we have like an incredibly diverse community. We've got sort of the history buffs who can look at like the artwork of a card and be like, that's not the tank it's saying it is, or that's not the artillery you're saying it is. We had one with the 1K Soviet AA gun. Someone came out and pointed out that the artwork was wrong. It was for a different AA gun, and 1939 actually had to change it, if I remember correct, to the correct one. But then we also have CCG experts who can like calculate the chances of top decking this certain card and going on to lethal. Oh, I'm afraid my bird is starting to sing. There you go, look at him.
What a cutie! Oh, with those nice rosy cheeks. That's so sweet.
Oh, look at him.
What a gorgeous bird.
staring at us.
Go on. Where are you going to... All right.
Oh.
So in Cards, we have like quite a diverse community. We've got the history buffs who can point out like this artwork is wrong just based on like the muzzle of a tank, to CCG experts who can sort of calculate, you know, the most optimal way of lethal, and they'll be like, actually, if you go with this route, you have a 0.5% chance of lethal, higher than this other one, so this is more optimal. And then we also just have sort of your more casual players who just like to sit back and relax and spend the evening on a sort of quite unique CCG. I was just curious, what sort of aspects of the game speak to you the most, and which sort of inspire you personally?
It's a tough question. I mean, I really appreciate various aspects of the game. So like the art, the music, the sound effects, just the overall way in which Cards is so kind of deeply thematic is something that I really appreciate and I love about it. So I don't actually have a very extensive CCG background, but I've always loved strategy games, kind of both PC games and board games. And so while I often kind of struggle to see the end moves quickly, it's something I very much appreciate. And I hugely admire, you know, people like J. King, Darkness, and Noen, you know, people who can just look at the board, analyze every possible outcome, and know exactly what to do at any given time. And the history aspect is also something that I really love about the game. You know, even if I'm not like the biggest history buff, it adds so much flavor and depth into the game, and being able to, you know, look at every unit, get the historical descriptions. Like I've picked up a lot of stuff from playing Cards. So I really appreciate kind of the whole picture, the whole theme, and how it manages to, you know, it's so rich in its kind of artistic expression, I feel.
Sure, that certainly makes sense. You know, with some video games, you play it and you're like, I want to hear the backstory behind this. And you search it and you just can't find anything on it because there's, you know, it's not been created yet. But for Cards, quite luckily, since it's all history, you can see a certain unit, be like, I want to learn about this. And you don't have to wait for a designer to create a history for it because there is a real history for it.
Exactly.
You mentioned board games. What sort of interests and hobbies do you have outside of your work at Cards?
Well, I mean, I used to have a lot of hobbies, but now I have a toddler. But so a lot of free time goes into kind of family. But yeah, I used to do a lot of board gaming. We had like a small group of friends that sometimes we would spend an entire weekend doing like a long campaign and, you know, kind of Spartacus or the Game of Thrones board game or something like that. These days, probably kind of aside from family stuff, probably the classic kind of video games and TV shows. The most recent kind of games I've been playing, aside from obviously Cards, I've been doing a bit of Elden Ring, some Dwarf Fortress, Sniper Elite 5 kind of around Christmas, and yeah, some really great series out there as well that I've been enjoying. All kinds of great, obviously kind of Star Wars, Marvel stuff. I'm also a bit of a horror buff for a lot of kind of shows and stuff. Been digging a lot of more recent Flanagan stuff. So that's kind of like most of where time goes in terms of hobbies and such these days.
Nothing compares to the horror of a toddler, though. That's the ultimate sort of horror, you know, trope. Is just
me up at night, yeah.
So I do have one last Topdeckers question, and it's a little bit cheeky, a little bit, you know. If you had to pick another member of 1939 to replace or just straight up get rid of, you know, you don't even have to replace them. Just they're gone. Who would you pick, and more importantly, why? The meaner, the more details, the more personal you can get with this, the better it will really, you know, get everything moving.
I mean, to be honest, I don't think that there's anyone that I would want to replace or eliminate. I think everyone does such an amazing job in their positions. I don't think that I could do better as exactly them. But and I don't think that any of them are kind of like, I don't look at any particular position and say that's exactly what I want to do, kind of to put myself in that sort of role. And I really like my job as well. I really like my position and what I'm doing in the company. So Who knows where that will kind of go over the course of the next 5 to 10 years? But I mean, we're a small company, and every single kind of cog is really crucial, I think, and valuable in making the cards machine turn. Yeah.
So what you're saying is, when there's expansion, there'll be a lot more room for sort of backstabbing and infighting among 1939. Once we've sort of, maybe a little bit after mobile release, we'll get mobile versus the main devs. You guys will try and compete. That sort of...
Yeah, there would need to be quite a lot of expansion. We're at the moment we're just over 20 people. I think I was like number 21 or 22 or something like that. So yeah, I mean, in such a small company, every single unit is so kind of crucial to the whole thing working.
Absolutely. So I have some community questions now. These were sourced. We put out a open sort of invitation. Anyone could send in a question. We did have certain criteria. We wanted things that were sort of less topical. We didn't want things about, say, when is mobile coming out, or these sort of very frequently asked questions, because we wanted it to be where even in 6 months' time, people can watch back, look at the interview, and it won't be something that's no longer relevant because of how times have changed. And we also wanted it to obviously be not too personal, but they can still ask questions about getting to know you a little bit better. So we picked, I believe, 5 different questions from everything we received. We will be putting on screen who asked them and all of this, so don't worry, if you've asked a question, you will get your name put on the screen. But the first question is, how did you get into World War II history, and what led you to 1939 in cards?
So, I mean, if I'm 100% honest, I mean, I'm not like a massive World War II history buff. I find the history really interesting. And I mean, I think undeniably Band of Brothers is one of the absolute best series of all time. But I don't stay up until 3 a.m. watching World War II in color. But what I did have was like a really huge kind of passion for just games, including kind of strategy, military themed games. I had some experience from the gaming industry. I did work at CCP Games for a little while before this. But I mean, really, in terms of kind of how that led me to 1939, it was kind of just a coincidence. I had sort of recently completed my BS degree in business administration. A little bit of a late bloomer in terms of going to university, but at the time I was also kind of 7 months pregnant when I was graduating, so I kind of did that sort of project first, you know, the whole being a mom thing, and then when she's maybe kind of 9-10 months old or so, I started looking for jobs, and I just saw this listed, and it kind of the stars just aligned, and I went for it, and one thing led to another, and now I'm here.
Yeah, well, welcome, and you know, not a late bloomer at all. There's plenty of time in life to get everything done.
Absolutely,
you know.
absolutely. But it was definitely kind of, you know, and I mean, I think that was a huge benefit to me as well, to be honest, that I didn't immediately just do the whole schooling thing. It was massively beneficial to take a bit of a break, figure out kind of other stuff, try out working in different places, and you know, I never would have done the studies that I did if I wouldn't have gone into the working environment first. So I'm very grateful for that. I don't mean to say it in that kind of way. I'm a massive fan of kind of older students.
No, of course. So you mentioned a bit about working before and about studying a little bit later. Could you just tell us a little bit more about your career arc, sort of what steps you took to becoming a community manager, maybe at what point you thought that might be something you were interested in? And yeah, just sort of you mentioned you studied business administration as well. So just sort of a little bit more about your career arc and how you got to here today.
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of not super straightforward in my case. It took me a long time to kind of figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, kind of thing. Educationally, I kind of, you know, I studied kind of social sciences a bit. That was always something that I was very interested in. Then I went and I did a diploma in design, just kind of general design, learning various different design-related things and concepts. I did a lot of service industry kind of jobs, a lot of kind of waiting, a little bit of events management. Then I was at CCP, like I mentioned earlier. I did customer support there for a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And when I was made redundant from there, that's when I kind of took a moment to consider, who do I really want to be? Kind of looking. I always knew that I really wanted to be in the games industry, if I possibly could. And so I kind of ended up thinking, I think I could gain a lot from learning business administration. I went straight into doing that. I specialized in management. Just kind of went through that really by the book, and did some various little summer jobs here and there. I was a summer employee at a ministry for a little while. Just kind of, all kinds of little things, and also, of course, like I mentioned earlier as well, doing a bit of kind of casual streaming for a while, especially while I was in a school. It was very handy to do that alongside that. So I built up kind of a little bit of a community around that. So it's kind of like somehow all of these elements got together. And and when I read the kind of job description for the community management, I don't think that I went into the study specifically thinking that's exactly what I'm going to do. But as soon as I kind of I read that and I thought about that, and I realized that actually this would really fit me well and be something that I would really be good at. So that's kind of how that whole thing came to be. I'm super happy with how it all came together, and that this is where it's led me to today.
It sounds like it was quite the adventure, and like you got a lot of different experience in a lot of different places, which I think is very beneficial for a community manager, because obviously I'd assume you're facing a lot of different challenges and a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. So being able to sort of put yourself in these different experiences and sort of try out different things, I imagine goes a long way to sort of fulfilling the needs that you have as a community manager.
Absolutely. And there's such a wide range. Obviously I have a lot of community management. I have also like the esports stuff, and so actually so many of these little different things that I've done somehow feed into making me much more capable at doing exactly what I'm doing now. So yeah. it all worked out really well.
So the next couple of questions might be a little bit more difficult to answer, because they're sort of more general questions about 1939's sort of directions that they like to take and how they like to move their way through what they're planning on doing. So it might be a little bit more difficult to answer as they're not solely community management based. The first one is, what is the sort of procedure for creating and balancing a new set of cards into the game? How do you sort of decide these are the cards we want to make, this is what we want to do, and how do they how does that evolution take place, and what does that look like in real time and in the real world?
So yeah, as you say, this isn't like 100% a community management type of question, but I was able to see this one coming, and I talked to Kelly, our lead game designer, to help answer this. And so what he said was that there are many different procedures when designing or balancing a card. And for some cards, we deliberately push it to be strong, to strengthen an existing underpowered strategy or to develop a new one. For others, they're intended more as alternatives to give players more flexibility in certain strategies. And still others are aimed to be like a silver bullet type of card, kind of strong against a particular other strategy. And on the whole, we try to have a mix of all of these things. Pushing too many strong cards would increase the power creep, and too many or too powerful silver bullet cards could make the game kind of too chance-based. So regarding the design process itself, it's a mix between kind of bottom up with thinking design functionality first and then find a good fit, versus the top down where we start with the name or the art and then design a card that thematically fits it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Design the cards which most suit the game, and then sort of mold that into the game itself. So you mentioned briefly sort of wanting to push certain archetypes, or maybe pull back other archetypes that are a little bit too strong. How do you sort of decide what should be pushed and what should be pulled? Is it based on more data, or is it more based on sort of community feedback and what people find they're struggling with?
So Kiele helped me out a little bit as well with this one. What he told me was that there are kind of certain archetypes that we want to be sort of ever present because they offer easy entry points for newer players. They're a good indicator of the different strategies in the game and or kind of resonate strongly with players for thematic reasons. For other more narrow archetypes, we try to keep as many viable at any given time, even though most of them will not be top tier. Then occasionally we deliberately choose to push a particular archetype for a little while to allow it a moment in the sun, so to speak, before tuning it back down after a while to sort of renew the meta.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think we can really see reflections of that in the game. You know, we sort of had Jagro sounds like one of these decks where there's a lot of benefits to keeping it about. It's quite easy to craft. It's quite on board with the sort of Japanese style of going very aggressive. And if you look at other CCGs, it reminds a lot of people of, say, Red Deck Wins from Magic the Gathering, which is a very aggressive deck. So that makes a lot of sense. And then sort of other archetypes being pushed and then sort of drawn back. You know, we've had South Damage, which was sort of pushed a little bit into the meta. That sort of pushed out USA Frontline, and then now it's being pulled back a bit. And it helps you sort of morph and evolve the meta, is what I'm understanding from this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the final community question, and this is going to be a lot easier of a question, a lot simpler of a question. What is your favorite card?
I mean, I have a hard time picking just one. I did answer this before a little while ago, and then I said kind of a Katusha, which I really like it because of kind of the random element. It's potentially a very powerful card that you get kind of early on, and it can stay with you for a long time. It can stay relevant for a long time. I would say I'm kind of mostly torn between that and the We Can Do It for sort of similar reasons. You know, I mean, the artwork with Rosie the Riveter there is awesome, and it's also kind of one of those cards that you get very early on, and you can see it, you know, kind of in your starting decks, and also sometimes in an OCC deck. So that's something that I like, kind of really appreciate about it.
No, I absolutely agree, especially with the We Can Do It. That card is easily my top 5 favorite cards, and it's so satisfying, especially when cards like Carpet Bombing are more in the meta, because you can see your opponent trying to get to Carpet Bomb, and then you're like, well, I'm just going to spend 5 credits to your 7 and cancel out your Carpet Bombing.
It's great.
So that's all from me for now. We've had the questions from the Topdeckers team. We've had the questions from the community. But I'm now going to pass the interview over to my fellow Topdeckers team member, Elena, also known as J Queen, who's going to ask you some questions about femininity and equality in the workplace and why in the gaming industry and why that's so important.
Thank you, Bubbles. Can't wait.
Thank you, Bubbles, for the introduction. This is Elena, J Queen here. We are gonna do maybe some more serious questions about like what it means to be a woman in the industry and how like her figure has inspired some of us, me for example. So it's very good to have you here, Elin. So let's get into it if you're all right with that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Elena. It's awesome to get to meet you.
You too. Finally.
Yeah.
All right. So before you came along, the Kards competitive scene and especially the casting table has been composed of only men, which to be fair is a trend that we can see in many video game communities. But do you think that made your experience different when you were entering the scene? And how so?
So I mean, in my experience, kind of in the video game industry, most places you'll go, you will find that men are in the majority. And that has, been the truth for me, I think, both in kind of in playing games, and also in my experience in working in the industry. But maybe this is partially down to kind of the choice of games. I'm not 100% sure. But I think it's just one of those things that you kind of get used to a little bit, whether you're kind of playing or working in the industry. And I mean, I've had this hobby since I was very young, so it's something that I think I've become very accustomed to. So I don't think it made my experience kind of different. as such. But I mean, I definitely hope to see the gender ratio kind of even out over the course of the next decades, and see more women feel empowered to participate in video games on both sides. As much as their interest kind of allows. Of course, some people are interested and some people are not, and that's totally fine. But yeah.
That is true. I also hope to see the same thing, even if it's just that it's made more accessible
Absolutely.
for different people. The next
Absolutely.
question is kind of in the line of that. So in Cards, we definitely have players of many cultures, gender, and sexual identities, and this makes the community so much richer and interesting to be a part of, in my opinion, at least. Now that you're getting to know the community a bit more, what do you think could be done to encourage this diversity? And what collectives do you feel are maybe underrepresented in this game? You've mentioned like women, for example. And why do you think that is currently?
I mean, I agree that there's a ton to be gained through diversity, and I think maybe the most kind of powerful tool that we have in that is having a welcoming community, which I think we have a really excellent community in Cards. And of course, it's really important. A community kind of enforces the norms and values. And this kind of, I feel like acceptance and understanding are definitely key values in the Cards community. From a kind of a demographic perspective, we collect kind of a very limited amount of data about our players, but I think it's fair to say that probably most CCGs have primarily a male player base. And I think it's really difficult to identify kind of exactly why that is. I kind of feel like it would be irresponsible of me to kind of make assumptions about that without kind of having the proper kind of research, the data and analysis. So, but it would be really interesting to see kind of some further research, to see some professionals kind of collect a lot of data and really dig down into the exact whys of why this is the way that it is.
Yeah, I'd love to see that too, as a psychology major. I think that would be a very interesting study to do. This goes sort of into what we were talking about of like different aspects that might deter some more diverse groups from playing certain games. And it's that what we call gamer culture, and especially in video games such as this one with war themes. Gamers are often said to be very sexist or like toxic in general, and many people, including me in some situations, have been turned away from playing these games because of this. In your experience as a woman involved in this industry, and as you said, you were also a gamer yourself, what amount of this toxicity do you find to be real, and how do you deal with it, or how have you dealt with it in the past?
Yeah, another very interesting and challenging question, really. So, I mean, yeah, obviously, I've spent a long time kind of playing games and have a little bit of kind of experience in the industry. I mean, I feel like kind of toxicity has maybe at times been more linked with certain communities, certain games more than others. I think that a lot of women who maybe play very kind of competitive titles, if you're kind of playing a team-based game that has voice comms, you maybe have experiences where at some point you think maybe I'll just not participate in the voice comms because I don't want to kind of feel like I'm getting into some kind of a conversation where I'm expected to justify my presence or something. Like I'm just here to have fun and to achieve a goal, really, and you don't want to distract from that in any way. So maybe you kind of, just kind of, speaking as a gamer, you kind of maybe alter your behavior a little bit based on some experiences. But I mean, I think that's kind of something that can happen almost anywhere you go, whether it's in games or something else. Certainly there can be kind of toxicity almost anywhere where someone might kind of target you based on certainly being in some sort of a minority, it's an interesting subject, but yeah, I mean, I feel like some toxicity is definitely real, but I think it's just hugely variable between games and communities, and it's not something that's very easily kind of quantifiable. Of course, dealing with it comes in many different forms. You know, I personally try to enter any situation just equipped with as much knowledge as possible, kind of prepared for various outcomes, and just trying my best to kind of remove any sort of reactive or emotional elements from potential responses. But I mean, I think that speaking to Cards specifically, I think that Cards has a really welcoming community that this kind of toxicity is something that I've really not experienced or personally seen in Cards.
Yeah, that is true. I think the structure of the game allows for more like anonymous players to get into it and like maybe not reveal details about themselves that might cause them to be targeted.
Yeah, and it's not a huge focus, you know. You're just here to be a person that's playing a game, and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So to end this in a more positive note, my last question is like maybe more optimistic, and we can talk a bit about the future as well. So sometimes we paint a grim picture of being a woman in a male-dominated industry or company, but maybe that's just one way of looking at it, right? In your experience, what are some of the unexpected perks that you've found being like a woman in a male-dominated type of industry?
You know, I'm just not sure that I can think of like a ton of specific perks. I mean, for me, it's just kind of normal. Like when I come to work, 99.99% of the time, I don't think about what gender I am. And I don't feel like anyone else is kind of thinking about it either. If there's maybe like one perk, it's maybe just that because you are kind of in the minority, you maybe end up building closer relationships with other women from an earlier point. You definitely have a lot of camaraderie, and you definitely kind of maybe relate to experiences that they might have just as gamers and as women in the same position. But yeah, that would probably be the main thing. You know, you end up looking out for each other and supporting each other.
That's very wholesome. I love that. I do find that as well with some girls that I've met that play cards as well. I just find that there's this instant connection where it's like, oh, you get me, and like it's not that male players don't get me, right? But it's like that extra step, and you like build a friendship faster. I think sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very cute. Yeah. Well, that would be the end of it. I'm sorry for the heavier questions. Trying to make you think.
No, for sure. It's a pleasure to think about these things. I mean, there are a lot of gender specific topics that are worthwhile to ponder, both about the industry and just gaming in general. So yeah, thank you for being here. It was wonderful to meet you.
It was wonderful meeting you too. I hope we can do more of these in the future. And from the entire Topdeckers team, thank you for having us and like giving us a bit of your time. You're a very busy person, and we're
My
just very
pleasure.
honored.
Absolutely my pleasure. It was great to be here, and I've been really excited to be able to be featured on your guys' awesome channel. I watch your content all the time, so it's wonderful to be a part of it.
I
Thank you
hope you
guys
like
so
the
much.
thumbnails.
They are awesome. You guys are such a great team, and it's really nice to see a bunch of talented individuals get together and make something really awesome. So good job, you guys. Keep it up.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon over here.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and a comment down below. Make sure to subscribe to catch our future content, and make sure to head over to the channel's page and check out our previous videos. Thank you to Elin for doing this interview with us and spending the time with us. Thank you to all our regular viewers. You guys are really what makes this possible and what allows us to do this. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to catch you all next time.